You're listening to episode 94, solo episode, My Journey to Getting Off an Antidepressant After 15 Years. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome to this special solo episode of the podcast. And thank you so much for checking it out. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. We're just going to kind of get right into it today. I want to take the time to share this story and this journey with you. And if you're someone who has been listening to a lot of episodes and you've been following my journey up to this point and you know a little bit about me, then I'm glad to be able to share more of my story with you here today and just to let you in on what is going on for me in my present life right now. And if you're someone who is brand new to the podcast, maybe you just stumbled upon this episode somehow and it interested you, and so you decided to hit play. I want to thank you for doing that, first of all. And also just want to say that I'm also glad to be able to share this part of my story with you as well. And I hope that if it's something that resonates with you, that you'll check out some of the other episodes on here. And I've also done a few other solo episodes as well, where I kind of dive into more of different parts of my story. Hope that you'll go and check that out. And again, just thank you for checking this episode out. And so, as you can gather from the title of this episode, I'm going to be talking today about this journey that I have been on to get off of an antidepressant that I have been on for the past 15 years. And I decided to speak about this publicly because, first off, I want to be transparent. I want to be an example for you. This brand is called The Grass Gets Greener, and I want to continue to show you how that is playing out for me in my life, in the hopes that, it inspires you in your own life and gives you hope for whatever situation you're going through. And secondly, I want to share this story for anyone who needs to hear it right now. Maybe some of you listening are in the same boat as I am. Maybe you're in the process of coming off of a medication, and maybe you're feeling really alone in going through that. And I hope that, in being able to share my story and share my experience, that you will feel less alone in that process, because I know that, it can definitely be very scary, and it's certainly easy to feel like you're on your own sometimes. And I do have to say that sharing this story is also going to be helpful for me as well. Putting this out there is going to be very therapeutic for me. And I want to talk now about why I'm choosing to share at this particular time. I have been on this journey since December of last year, 2015. That's when I started to taper off of my medication. I haven't shared it up until now for a couple of reasons. One, I was actually pursuing some legal options, but that ended up not panning out. And I kind of missed the boat on that, but that's okay, because it means that I can speak freely about it. And that is, I realize that is most important to me. But there's also been this shame that I've had around it, because a lot of people didn't know that I was taking an antidepressant. And so I've been very self-conscious about that and just fearful of, what people would think when they find out, and just afraid of being judged, and those are just kind of these old insecurities that I have from what I've gone through in the past, right? And so I've been able to work past that and get to a point now where I am okay with sharing it, and I'm okay with just kind of being an open book. And like I said, if it can help someone, then that's great. So I'm happy to share this now. And the other thing too is we're getting towards the end of the second year of this podcast. And actually the 2-year anniversary is on October 27th. And so the next 2 episodes are going to be recap episodes. You might recall from last year, what I did at the end of year 1 was I had 2 episodes where there were just clips of my guests' answers to the final question that I ask everyone. And so I'm going to be doing that again this year. So those are going to be the next 2 episodes, and then we'll be starting up with year 3. And I am going to be making a change to the schedule, so the frequency of when I release episodes, and I'll get into that more at the end of this episode. Yeah, with all of that, I think, it seemed to me that this was just a good time to do this. And so here we are. And there's a couple of things that I want to say before I get into my story. The first thing that I want to say, and that I want to be very clear on from the very beginning here, is that I in no way mean any disrespect to anyone who is taking a medication. This episode is not about, if you're taking an antidepressant or any other type of medication of that nature, that you must come off of it. Of course, no, that is not what I'm saying here. This is about me sharing what I feel like is right for me and respecting whatever you feel like is right for you. And at the same time, it's also about sharing what is possible. So if you're someone who is in the process of coming off of a medication, or you're thinking about coming off of a medication, then I want my story to give you hope for that. But I also want to make it clear that it's not an easy path, and I think that there is a certain way to go about doing it in order to have success, and also that, it's not for everyone. I think you have to have a good solid foundation, and you have to be at a good point in your life. You have to be pretty stable before you, even think about doing something like this. But if that's you and you're in that position, then again, I want you to know that it is possible. But please, please always consult with a medical professional if you are going to go down that path yourself. Even though I might be going down this path and I may have learned a lot of things along the way so far, I can't tell you how to do it for yourself. And that wouldn't be safe anyways. So it definitely get the help of a medical professional if that's something that you want to pursue. And please don't ever stop taking your medication cold turkey. I know that's not what I've done, but if you have any thoughts of doing that, please just don't do that. Okay, so now that we got that stuff out of the way, and I just felt like, those things were important to be said for this type of episode. So I'd like to start my story 17 years ago. I'm going to take you back to when I was 17 years old. And I want to start by talking about what led me to getting onto an antidepressant in the first place, because that's going to be really important for this story. And so when I was 17 years old, I had just, gotten out of the bullying situation a few years back, and I was doing okay. I wasn't doing okay. I was trying to navigate everything that I had gone through and the aftermath of it all, and trying to begin to heal from it and have some type of normal life, right? And I think it all got triggered for me when I got my first job. And at 17 years old, I was going to start working that summer at McDonald's. And maybe some of you, can share in that experience as well. But what happened to me was, a few weeks prior to that, I got sick one day. I just got sick to my stomach, and I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought I just had a stomach bug or something of that nature, but it didn't clear up, not the way you would expect it to. It was lingering, and it turns out that I developed acid reflux and GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, and I went through a period where I would get sick every morning. I was throwing up every morning for 2 weeks. And this was a very scary time for me because I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I had no control over my body, and I was scared. I was scared that, this was going to continue. There was no end in sight. And so I ended up not being able to start my job when I was supposed to, but luckily, they let me stay on and let me have a few more weeks before I started. But this became a very stressful and scary time for me, and I ended up starting to get anxious at this point. And I suppose I had dealt with anxiety in the past. I actually don't remember that too much, or at least I don't remember like any sort of severe bouts of anxiety. But I started to develop anxiety at this point. I started to have panic attacks, and I ended up getting into this vicious cycle where feeling sick made me nervous, and then being nervous only contributed to me feeling sick. And the cycle just continued, and I got worse for a while before things started to turn around. And it wasn't until I went to see a gastroenterologist and had a bunch of tests done that we figured out what was going on, and I got onto some medication and started to feel better. But now I also needed something to help me with the anxiety because that was still there as well. And so I ended up going on to an antidepressant at 17 years old. And this was the first time that I had ever taken any type of medication like this. And I was on one particular antidepressant actually, I tried a couple at the beginning. They didn't pan out for me. And then I got myself onto one that seemed to be doing okay. And I was on that for about a year. But I was dealing with a lot of side effects, particularly like it was draining me of my energy. And at this point, I had just started college. And it was really hard for me to focus on being a student and doing my work when I just needed to sleep so much. And I actually almost failed out of college in my first semester because it was like such a shock to my system. On the one hand, because I had come from a school that didn't prepare me too well for college, and then I had, these physical issues going on as well. But thankfully, I didn't fail out, and I was able to get through that. But I realized that, I needed to change things up if I was going to be able to continue to function in school. And so at this time, I had been seeing ads on TV. Like, it was really popular back then to see ads for antidepressants and, how they would offer you the world, right? And there was one in particular that really stood out to me because I felt like it spoke to me, or, the commercial spoke to me. And this was for the antidepressant Paxil. And it claimed that it would give you your life back. And I felt like that's exactly what I needed. And so I went to my doctor and suggested that we try switching me over to Paxil. And she didn't have any issues with that. So 19 years old, I get put on Paxil. And you know what? Like, it actually worked for me. I felt like it was giving me my life back, just like it had said in the commercial. And it was really amazing. And I felt like it actually had saved my life to some extent because I was so sick, from the acid reflux and just being stuck in that cycle of having stomach issues and having the anxiety and not being able to break out of that I was really concerned that I was just going to wither away, because I had lost a lot of weight at that point as well. I mean, mind you, so this was 2 years after I had the first flare-up of the acid reflux, and things had settled down a bit, but, they weren't completely stable at this point, and I would still go through these bad bouts and have trouble eating and just have a lot of anxiety around feeling sick. Actually, this is when I developed a lot of social anxiety because it was difficult for me to go out and, to go to work or just to go out with friends. Or one of the things that was most difficult for me to do was go out to eat because I was just so scared that I would get sick. And then I would get myself so worked up and get so anxious that I would end up getting sick. And so it was just a really bad time for me. And once I got onto the Paxil and I started to just calm down, my stomach started to be able to calm down and stabilize, and things started to get better. I started feeling like more myself again. But in addition to that, I started feeling like even better than I had ever felt up to this point. I mean, my anxiety was so under control that I didn't even have to think about it. I didn't have to put any effort into keeping myself calm. It was just automatic for me. And that allowed me to, do a lot of things that I did back then without getting nervous. I mean, finishing college, moving out on my own, going to grad school, going to Europe by myself. I mean, I did all of these things without really getting nervous about them because, like I said, it's like I was on autopilot at this point. And my stomach was also doing well, and I had that under control. And I was just really stable at this time. And things pretty much stayed that way up until last year. Although I will say that I did try about 5 times to come off of Paxil during this time. I was, of course, unsuccessful each time. And a big part of that was that I wasn't going about it the right way. I didn't have the right doctor at the time who knew how to help me go about it the right way. And so each time I tried, I would get so far and then not be able to continue and then just go back up to my original dose. And then I would think, well, I guess I'm not supposed to get off of it. I must need it, Or even though, like, if at times I felt like I didn't need it anymore, I did feel like my brain was dependent on it, and it was going to be damn near impossible to take it away from my brain because it had been so used to it. And that's what happens, like your brain will stop doing some of the work because now you got the medication doing the work for you. And your brain needs time to kind of relearn how to do what it's supposed to do and start, providing for you the way that it should without the medication being there. But anyways, that's kind of where I was at with it up until a year ago. And at that point, things started to change for me from a mindset perspective. And it actually started with my husband. He wanted to see me get off of the medication. He wanted, for whatever reason, it was important for him to see me be able to function without it. And I was very resistant to that idea. And after 5 failed attempts, it's probably no surprise that I was resistant to that. But over the last couple of years, our lifestyle had started to change, and we had started to become more aware of how we ate and the things that we put into our bodies. And being healthy became a top priority for us. And as I started to kind of go down that path and started to look into living healthy and kind of having a holistic lifestyle, I started to pay more attention to things related to mental health and medications. And I was watching a summit, an online summit one time last year, and one of the topics was coming off of your antidepressants. And after I watched that, I started to have some hope that I could possibly do this for myself. But in addition to that, like I said, as we were trying to be more healthy, I started getting to a point where I felt like this was going to be a piece of the puzzle that I was going to need to address. And for me personally, to feel like I'm being healthy and I'm living my best life, I started to feel like the Paxil needed to go. And I just want to stop here for a minute and reiterate that I am not judging anyone who takes medication, okay? And I don't believe that it means that you're not healthy if you take something to control anxiety, depression, what have you. Not at all. This is just my personal experience and what I feel for myself. Believe me, I learned about 20 years ago not to judge anybody, okay? And that's been something that's been really important for me in my life, to be someone who is a safe person and does not judge other people for anything. Unless you're hurting them, of course, that's not cool. But anyways, I digress. So a little over a year ago then, I got this idea in my head that this is possible and that this is what I wanted to pursue for myself. And so I actually reached out to the doctor who I heard speak on this summit on this topic, because this was the first person who I had ever heard talk about this sort of thing and talk about doing it in a way where you can actually get off of it, I mean, she talked about it in such a way that I had never heard a psychiatrist talk about it before, and that gave me hope. And so I reached out to this doctor, and she was in California, and I was in Connecticut at the time. But I was determined to find a way to work with her because I was convinced that this is the person I need to work with to make this happen. And we were going to work together remotely if need be, and she was going to work with the psychiatrist that I was seeing at that time because she was not going to be able to take me on as a full patient if I wasn't able to go see her in person. So that's what we were planning to do. But at the same time, my husband ended up getting a job out in California because we had been wanting to move out here for a little while up to this point. And it just happened to work out at that time that he got the job out here, and we were now going to be coming out here. Actually, as I'm recording this, it's been just a little over a year now that we've been here. And so I let the doctor know and told her that I was going to be able to see her in person. And so we scheduled to do that when I get out here. And that's what happened. I started seeing her, and this was probably back last November. And we did some tests just to kind of see where all my levels were at with everything at that point. And she started giving me a bunch of supplements to help me in this journey, to help me with any withdrawals that I would be encountering, and just to help me be kind of, the healthiest that I could be going into it. Because like I said at the beginning, I think that is so important, that you really have to be at a good point to start on a journey like this. And that's kind of come to hold true for me lately. But so up until just recently, so I'm talking mid-August, up until then, I had been doing pretty well. I had been experiencing some withdrawals at times, particularly each time I would taper down on my dose. And, I would get headaches, dizziness, nausea, things of that nature. But I have been able to get through them and, continue tapering down. And as of right now, I've actually gotten to the lowest dose that I've ever been able to get to, and for the longest amount of time that I've ever been on a quit attempt. My previous attempts would last me maybe a couple months before I'd have to give up and go back to the full dose. But then in mid-August, I started to have some more issues, and I was noticing that I was feeling more anxious than usual. And by the end of August, I was having full-on panic attacks again. This was really scary and really disheartening for me. I was scheduled to taper down more at that point. Of course, we had to put that on hold. And then with the anxiety shortly thereafter, I started having stomach problems again. And that all came to a head toward the end of September. And as you might recall, I had to skip an episode of the last Monday in September. That's because I wasn't feeling good the week before. And I was having a full-on flare-up of my acid reflux. And so here I was. I felt like I had regressed 17 years to where I was dealing with acid reflux and the anxiety again, except this time around, the anxiety led to the acid reflux instead of the other way around. But either way, it was still scary and unsettling. And so we tweaked my supplements a little bit. I started seeing another doctor to help me with my stomach problems. Because actually, up until this point, starting around the end of last year, once I started taking all of these supplements, my stomach was feeling pretty stable without having to take any medication for it. And so for about 9-10 months, my stomach was doing well on its own, and it was great. And I knew that the reason it was acting up now was because of all the anxiety that I was experiencing. And so I was really focusing on things to help myself calm down. I started meditating, started doing some deep breathing, started taking more baths with some essential oils, and just making sure I was getting outside, getting some sunshine, and just trying to have as little stress in my life as possible. But it was still a challenge for me to get things under control because now here I was getting into this cycle again of the anxiety causing the stomach problems, causing more anxiety, and around we go. And then to top it all off, I've started dealing with insomnia. So It's not the kind of insomnia where I can't fall asleep. No, I fall asleep just fine, but now I can't stay asleep. And so when I wake up at, say, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and I can't go back to sleep, well, I start getting anxious, and that just sets a bad tone for the day. And so I've had all this stuff going on over the past month or two. And that's another reason that I want to share this right now, because of what I've been going through recently, and because I know that it has affected the podcast. And so I want you to know about it. But I don't share all that with you to make it sound like some kind of horror story and to scare you into ever trying to get off of your medication. No, I share it with you because it's only part of the story. And I think the other part of the story is more encouraging. Oh, and I will just say that as of right now, I have been able to get things back under control for the most part. I still have got some anxiety there, but it's not too bad. It's nothing out of control, and I haven't had a panic attack in a while. And my stomach has been getting back under control as well, and I've been able to do that naturally. And so I'm really excited about that, and hopefully, that's heading in the right direction. And, as long as I can keep myself calm, then everything will stay under control, and I won't have any other issues coming up to the surface. But during this time, I have also been able to do a lot of healing, and I've had a lot of realizations. I mean, in the course of a month, I've probably had more realizations than I've had in the past 5 years combined. And one of the things that I've realized that has been critical to all of this is that if you remember when I said I felt like I was on autopilot when I had started the Paxil and I was doing well and I didn't have to think about the anxiety, well, I think that's pretty accurate of how it was. I was on autopilot, and as a result, there were things that I still needed to deal with and work through, but I wasn't aware of it because I was kind of numb to it at that point. And so now that I have very little medication in my system, to the point where I don't think it's doing much for me now, I feel like I can feel everything again. And I'm experiencing so many emotions, and I think that is something that has led to the anxiety because it's been a bit overwhelming. I've just had a flood of emotions and these realizations, and it's just been a lot to process in a short amount of time. But the fact that I've been able to have these emotions and these realizations, like I said, it's allowed me to do some healing that I thought I was all set with. And it's also allowing me to tap into the source of my anxiety. So going back, 17 years and figuring out, what really contributed to it at that point, and finally dealing with that head on, because I did not deal with it back then. I dealt with it by taking the medication. And as a result of that, getting it under control, I thought that I was all set. And sure, if I had chosen to stay on the medication for the rest of my life, then I probably wouldn't have to deal with it. But it's become important for me to go through this process and to kind of overturn every stone and uncover everything and really, truly understand as much as I can about myself and everything that I've been through and everything that I feel and why I feel it and what it means and how do I deal with it, and how do I now finally get to a place where I'm doing the work, I'm controlling it, and I'm able to do that. It's something that's manageable for me, and I don't need medication for it anymore. Because I do believe that I can manage it without the medication. I've actually become quite determined to manage it without the medication. And again, this is about, what I feel like is right for me, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you about what's right for you. But for me, I really want to get to that place where I can be free of the medication, because I've started to have glimpses of, not only the negative side of not being on the medication anymore, but the positive side of that as well. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting back in touch with who I am, and I'm feeling less numb, and I feel like the Paxil, one of the side effects from it is that it was affecting my memory and my concentration and my ability to form thoughts sometimes. And I feel like I'm starting to get more clear-headed again, and that feels really good to me. And so now, in spite of the struggles that I've had, like, I'm more motivated than ever to continue down this journey, to get to that light at the end of the tunnel, and to be able to reap the rewards of that. And I don't know how much further I have to go. I don't know how long this journey is going to be. And while that can be a little discouraging, I stay positive by knowing that I'm on the path and I'm doing it and I'm getting there. And even if it takes me another year, I think I'm going to be okay with that. And for a while, I was seeing this whole situation as like a step back. Like I said, I felt like I had regressed back to when I was 17 years old. But then I realized that that's not the case at all. Everything that I experienced over the past 17 years, everything that I have learned, that's still there with me, and that can't be taken away. And even if, it was the Paxil that was keeping me under control and keeping me from being anxious when I was taking on certain things in my life at that point, the fact is, I still did them. I did them. And when I'm having a rough time of it now, I can draw strength from that. And I can remind myself of what it was like to have confidence at that time, to take on those challenges and to not have that anxiety. And as a result, I believe that I can have that again now without the medication. And so I don't see this as a step in the wrong direction. I see this as this whole journey of getting off of this medication is kind of its own thing in and of itself. And in and of itself, it is a step in the right direction for me. And even if I take some steps back on this journey, I'm not taking those steps back throughout my entire life. I'm only taking them back within this journey. And so overall, I'm still taking steps forward. And I hope that that makes sense. And looking at it from that perspective is what has been able to give me the hope that I need to be able to continue to do this. And honestly, I've gotten to a point now where I can't go back even if I wanted to. Unlike all those times in the past where I had tried to come off of it and wasn't able to and had to go back up to the full dose, and I would be good, 1-2 days later, it's like I was right back to where I'd left off. I can't do that now. I've come so far that it's like sink or swim at this point. And if I wanted to go back to the full dose, I would have to pave a new path back, because the path that I've been on to get to here, it's kind of gotten washed away behind me now. And so I would have to go through the process of, that initial period of getting onto the medication all over again and go through those side effects that, you typically experience when you get onto the medication in the first place. And that's made things scary for me too, because I feel like now I don't have a safety net anymore. But I know that what I do have is support and resources that I did not have any of the times I tried in the past. And I know that this time is different because I've gotten farther than I've ever gotten before. And while I've had all these past issues come back up for me now, the fact that I have been able to get them back under control, or to a more manageable extent, that tells me that I can do this and I'm going to be okay. And so that's kind of it. That's kind of the journey that I have been on. And I apologize if I got a little long-winded there, but I feel like there was a lot to say. And I guess when you keep this stuff in for so long, you have a lot to say about it. If you're still listening, I thank you for that. I hope that you have found this helpful or interesting. And I gotta tell you, I'm scared to put this out there. It's very vulnerable, and it definitely opens me up for judgment, but it's what I needed to do, and it feels like a weight is being lifted. And I see this as just another piece of the puzzle for me in this process of getting off of my medication. And I also truly do hope that it helps anyone who needs to hear it. So please know that if you're going through something similar, you are not alone. And I welcome any feedback that anyone has. I hope that it'll be supportive, but whatever you have to share, I welcome it. You can leave a comment over on the show notes page, or you can send me an email, melissa@thegrassgetsgreener.com. But this has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 94. You can find the show notes page over at thegrassgetsgreener.com/Paxil's story. And I really just want to thank you for being here with me today for this episode. And if you have a few more minutes to spare, I do have just a few more things I want to go over real quick before I wrap this one up. So as I mentioned earlier, we're getting toward the end of year 2 of the podcast. And as we're going to be starting up with year 3, I've decided that I'm going to be switching over to a bi-weekly schedule. So I'm going to be releasing episodes every other week instead of every week. And I thought long and hard about that because, it's not an easy decision for me to make. I definitely would love to be able to continue to release an episode each week. But given my current situation, and also I have some other things that I'm trying to focus on as well, it seems like the best thing for me to do is to go to this every other week schedule. And at least for the time being, I definitely want to get back to a weekly schedule as soon as possible. But for now, at least for the rest of the year, I'm going to be doing every other week schedule. So starting with the first episode in November. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that. And speaking of things that I'm going to be working on, one thing that I have been working on is starting up a coaching practice. And so I'd like to be able to offer you coaching services if that's something that you're interested in pursuing with me. And I'm looking to work with anyone who comes from a traumatic childhood. As you know, my story is having been bullied when I was growing up, and that was the one thing that impacted me the most. And so I'm happy to work with anyone who was bullied growing up as well. But, I can also work with anyone who has been through anything traumatic growing up that kind of, derailed you and sent you on a completely different trajectory in life. And in particular, I'm looking to work with people who, you've dealt with a lot of the issues that resulted from whatever you went through. And you're in a pretty good place today, but you feel like you're still being held back by something. And you're looking to get past any blocks that are still there holding you back so that you can start to achieve the goals that you have for yourself in life and reach the potential that you want to reach. And so if that's you and that's where you're at, then I would love to have a conversation with you to see if I can help you. I offer a full coaching session. It's complimentary, no obligation, just to see if, I can help you with your situation and if it would be a good fit. And so if that's something that interests you, then feel free to reach out to me, melissa@thegrassgetsgreener.com, and we'll go from there. And the last thing that I want to mention today is just a reminder that I have a Patreon campaign set up for the podcast, and I know I haven't really done any promotion of it since I launched it a few months ago, and actually I'm still looking to get my first patron, but I just wanted to take a minute now to remind you that that is there, and that can be found over at thegrassgetsgreener.com/Patreon, Patreon. And if you're not sure what that's all about, I definitely invite you to go to the link and check it out. And I'll have this on the show notes page as well. But it's essentially, a way for you to help me support the show. And in return, there are some perks available there that you would get for your support. And I mention this now because if I can get some funding through that, then that would be a way for me to bring the podcast back to a weekly schedule more quickly. And it starts at just $1 a month. So if you want to check that out, again, that's over at thegrassgetsgreener.com/Patreon. You can go see what that's all about and see if it's something that you would be able to help with. But other than that, I just want to thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. And just know that I'm here to support you in any way that I can as well. And that pretty much wraps things up for this episode. And I hope to catch you next week with the first of the 2 recap episodes that will be wrapping up year 2. And as always, have hope.